Jake Morrison stood at the entrance of the Galactic Defense Academy and tried not to look as nervous as he felt. The building in front of him was huge, made of some kind of metal that changed colors in the sunlight. It was like nothing on Earth. Then again, he was not on Earth anymore. He was on Nexera Prime, a planet so far from home that the journey had taken 3 weeks, even with the new, faster-than-light engines. He was the first human to ever attend this academy. That thought kept running through his mind as he walked through the main gate. The first human. No pressure. The academy had been training warriors from across the galaxy for over 2,000 years. Every species that mattered had sent their best soldiers here. The Krell came here. The Thorgans came here. The Shalani came here, even though they hated fighting. And now, humans were allowed to send someone too. Jake adjusted his bag on his shoulder and walked into the main courtyard. Other cadets were already there, and he could not help but stare. He had seen aliens before. Of course, Earth had been in contact with the Galactic Council for 3 years now, but seeing them on video screens was different from standing next to them. A group of Krell cadets stood near a fountain. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were dark and cold. They looked at Jake as he passed, and he heard one of them say something in their language. The others laughed. Jake kept walking. He had dealt with bullies before. Near the dormitory entrance, he saw a Thorgan for the first time in person. The creature was massive, easily 9 feet tall, and covered in thick scales. Its arms were as thick as tree trunks. Jake suddenly understood why Thorgans had a reputation for breaking things. He found his room assignment on a digital board in the main hall. Room 247, second floor. When he got there and opened the door, he found his roommate already unpacking. The creature turned around, and Jake tried not to react. His roommate looked like a giant praying mantis, standing upright on 2 legs. It had 4 arms, large compound eyes, and mandibles that moved as it spoke. "Hello," the creature said in perfect English. "You must be Jake Morrison. I am Chix. I am from the Mantari hive." Jake set down his bag and extended his hand, then wondered if that was the right thing to do. Chix looked at his hand for a moment, then reached out with one of his own limbs and shook it gently. "Nice to meet you," Jake said. "You are the human," Chix said. "Everyone has been talking about you. The first of your kind to attend the academy." "Yeah, that's me," Jake said. He started unpacking his things. "What have they been saying?" Chix made a clicking sound that might have been a laugh. "Many things. Some cadets think it is interesting. Others think humans are too primitive to be here. The Krell are taking bets on how long you will last." "How long do they think I'll last?" "Most say 2 weeks, some say 1 week. A few think you might make it to the first major test before you quit." Jake smiled. "Good. Low expectations are easy to beat." Over the next few days, Jake learned the layout of the academy. The training grounds were enormous, with areas designed for different types of combat. There were classrooms with technology he barely understood. The cafeteria served food from 100 different worlds, and Jake had to ask Chix which items would not kill him. The other cadets kept their distance. Some watched him with curiosity. Others ignored him completely. The Krell group made it clear they thought he did not belong there. On the 3rd day, Jake met his primary instructor. Commander Vex's Thar was a Krell, older than the cadet Krell, with scars across his face and arms. He walked into the classroom with perfect military posture and looked at each cadet in turn. When his eyes landed on Jake, they stayed there for a long moment. "I am Commander Vex Thar," he said. His voice was deep and rough. "I have been teaching tactical warfare at this academy for 40 years. I have trained some of the finest military minds in the galaxy. I have also watched many cadets fail because they did not have what it takes to be here." He moved between the desks, his 4 arms clasped behind his back. "This academy is not easy. We do not lower our standards for anyone. Every species here has earned their place through strength, intelligence, or tactical ability. Some of you will succeed. Most of you will not. His eyes found Jake again. Humanity is new to the Galactic Council. Your species has only just discovered faster-than-light travel. You have no established military tradition in space. You have no experience fighting against other species. Some of my colleagues question whether you are ready for this level of training. Jake met his gaze and did not look away. He had been a Marine for 6 years before being selected for this program. He had seen combat. He knew what it meant to be tested. But you are here, Vexthar continued. And while you are here, you will be held to the same standards as every other cadet. No special treatment. No excuses. You will succeed or fail on your own merit. Is that clear, Cadet Morrison? Yes, sir, Jake said. Good. Vexthar moved to the front of the room. In 1 week, you will all take your first major evaluation. The Combat Solutions Examination. This test has been used at this academy for over 1,000 years. It separates those who can think like warriors from those who cannot. 40% of cadets fail this test and are removed from the program. A worried murmur went through the class. You will have 5 days to prepare, Vexthar said. Use them well. Study the tactical manuals in the library. Practice your problem-solving skills. And remember that in combat, there is rarely one right answer. What matters is how you think through a problem. After class, Chicks walked with Jake back to their room. The Combat Solutions Examination is difficult, Chick said. It tests how well you can adapt and find solutions under pressure. Many cadets spend weeks preparing for it. We only have 5 days, Jake said. Yes. Vexthar likes to surprise the first-year cadets. He wants to see how you handle stress. Chicks's mandibles clicked together thoughtfully. I have taken practice versions of this test. The questions are not about strength or speed. They are about thinking clearly when the situation is bad. Jake nodded. I can do that. I hope so, Chick said. I would like to keep my roommate for more than 1 week. That evening, Jake went to the academy library. It was a massive room filled with data terminals and holographic displays. He found a quiet corner and started reading through tactical manuals. Some were from the Krell, focusing on direct assault and overwhelming force. Others were from the Venn Collective, emphasizing careful planning and logical analysis. As he read, Jake realized something. Every species approached problems differently based on their biology and culture. The Krell liked direct solutions because they were strong and fast. The Thorgans relied on brute force because they were nearly impossible to hurt. The Shalani avoided conflict entirely because they were peaceful by nature. But humans? Humans had spent thousands of years fighting each other with everything from stones to nuclear weapons. Humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless wars. They had learned to adapt to any situation because they had to. They were not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but they were creative. They found ways to win when they should have lost. Jake smiled to himself as he continued reading. Let the Krell make their bets. Let them think he would fail. He had not come to this academy to quit after 1 week. He had come to show the galaxy what humans could do, and in 5 days, he would get his chance. The examination room was white and sterile, designed to eliminate distractions. 147 cadets from 32 different species sat at individual stations, each with a tablet adapted to their specific physiology. Jake looked around the room and saw nervous faces on every kind of being imaginable. Chick sat 3 rows ahead, his compound eyes focused forward. The Krell cadets looked confident, almost bored. A group of Shalani in the back corner looked terrified. Jake understood why. This test could end their academy careers before they really began. Commander Vexthar stood at the front of the room with 2 other instructors. You have 3 hours, he announced. The test will adapt to your pace. Some questions are simple. Others are complex. All of them matter. You may not communicate with other cadets. You may not access outside information. You may only use your own mind and the data provided in each question. Begin. 2. 4 3 2. The tablets activated simultaneously. Jake looked down at his screen and saw the first question appear in English. It was a basic logistics problem about moving supplies through hostile territory. He worked through it quickly, showing his calculations and reasoning. The answer came easily. The second question was about defensive positions. The third was about communication protocols. The fourth was about resource management. Jake moved through them steadily, taking his time to think through each one carefully. Some cadets around him were already on question 10 or 12, but Jake did not rush. Speed meant nothing if your answers were wrong. Question 15 was harder. It showed a battle scenario with incomplete information and asked him to make strategic decisions without knowing the enemy's full strength. Jake thought about fog of war, about making choices with limited data. He wrote out his answer, explaining not just what he would do, but why, and what alternatives he would keep ready if his assumptions were wrong. Question 16 dealt with moral choices in combat, a scenario where saving civilians might cost military advantage. Jake answered honestly, knowing some instructors might not like his response, but the question asked what he would do, not what was officially correct. Then came question 17. The screen changed, showing a new scenario. Jake read it carefully. He was infiltrating an enemy facility. His target was behind a reinforced door with 2 armed guards. He was unarmed and outnumbered. The question was clear. Provide 3 viable methods to neutralize this threat and complete the mission. Jake looked at the question for a long moment. Around the room, other cadets had already started typing their answers. He could hear the soft clicking of Krell claws on their tablets. He could see Chix's arms moving as he wrote. 3 methods. The question wanted 3 methods. Jake started typing. Method 1 was straightforward. He would observe the guards for several days, learning their routine. He would befriend them by bringing food or small gifts, building trust. Then he would add a sedative to their drinks and walk through the door while they slept. Simple. Effective. Low risk of detection. Method 2 involved creating a diversion. Set off an alarm in another part of the facility. Something that required investigation. When one guard left to check it out, he would neutralize the remaining guard with a sleeper hold, take the guard's weapon and uniform, and wait for the second guard to return. Then he would either eliminate the second guard or walk through the door with the stolen credentials. Method 3 focused on timing. Study the guard rotation schedule and infiltrate during a shift change. That was when protocols were loosest, when guards were tired or distracted, when new guards were still getting oriented. Slip through in the confusion. Jake paused. He had answered the question. 3 viable methods, just like it asked. But the question kept bothering him. It said 3 methods, but it did not say only 3 methods. And in Jake's experience, having backup plans was the difference between success and failure. What if the first 3 methods were not possible? What if the situation did not allow for those approaches? He kept typing. Method 4 involved posing as maintenance staff. Every facility had maintenance needs. Claim there was an urgent repair required. Show fake work orders, and get the guards to open the door themselves. Method 5 was about the fire suppression system. Trigger it remotely if possible, or manually if necessary. Use the chaos and reduced visibility to slip past the guards while they dealt with the emergency. Method 6 focused on hacking. If the facility had an AI system controlling security, compromise it. Issue false orders reassigning the guards to another location. Walk through the door unopposed. Jake's fingers moved faster now. Each method led to another idea, another approach. His military training combined with years of studying human history and warfare. Humans had been fighting each other for thousands of years, and they had learned every possible way to win. Method 7 involved psychological warfare. Convince the guards their families were in danger elsewhere in the facility. Make them abandon their post. Method 8 used basic chemistry. Most facilities had cleaning supplies. Mix the right chemicals to create a smoke bomb or a small explosive. Use it to incapacitate the guards without killing them. Method 9 was about patience. Apply for a job at the facility weeks or months in advance. Become a trusted employee. Walk through the door with legitimate credentials. The methods kept coming. Jake wrote about using reflected light to blind opponents. He described getting intentionally captured and using the facility's own detention protocols to gain access from inside. He explained how to manipulate guard psychology by making them feel like heroes for letting him through. Around the room, cadets were finishing question 17 and moving on. Jake glanced up and saw that most tablets showed question 18 or 19 or 20. He was still on 17. But he could not stop. Each method was viable. Each one could work in the right circumstances. Method 23 involved turning yourself into a non-threat. Pretend to be injured or sick. Make the guards take you to medical facilities inside the secure area. Escape from medical and reach your target. Method 24 used social engineering. Research the guards beforehand. Find out what they care about, what they fear, what they want. Exploit that information to manipulate them into helping you. Jake's hands were tired, but he kept writing. He was up to method 27 now, describing how to introduce a mild pathogen into the facility's water system days before the mission. Nothing deadly. Just enough to make the guards sick and less alert. Time your infiltration for maximum effectiveness. Method 28 covered long-term deep cover operations. Spend months building a false identity. Get hired at the facility legitimately. Work your way up to a position with access. Complete your mission from the inside without ever raising suspicion. Method 29 focused on alliance building. Find someone inside the facility who is unhappy with the current leadership. Recruit them. Have them provide intelligence and assistance. They open the door from the inside while you approach from outside. Jake paused again. He had 29 methods now, far more than the question asked for. But there was one more approach. One that he had been thinking about since he started writing. It was the most complex method, but also the most effective. He began typing method 30. This method required time and genuine effort, but the payoff was enormous. Instead of treating the guards as obstacles to eliminate, treat them as people to understand. Befriend them over an extended period. Learn about their lives, their families, their hopes and dreams. Find common ground. Build real relationships. Then, when the time came, convince them that the target behind the door was actually the real threat. Not through lies or manipulation, but through honest conversation and shared values. Make them see that their true duty was not to protect a corrupt target, but to stand with you against that corruption. Turn them into allies who opened the door willingly and helped you complete your mission. Jake explained the psychology behind this approach. He detailed how humans formed bonds across cultural barriers. He described how trust could change someone's entire worldview. This was not about deception. It was about genuine connection leading to a shared purpose. The real genius of this method was the outcome. Instead of 2 fewer guards in the world, you gained 2 skilled warriors for your cause. Instead of creating enemies and resentment, you created allies and goodwill. Instead of spending resources on eliminating targets, you multiplied your own forces. Jake finished writing and looked at what he had created. 6 pages of detailed combat solutions, 30 different methods, each viable, each suited to different circumstances. The question had asked for 3. But Jake was a Marine, and Marines believed in contingency plans. He submitted his answer and moved on to question 18. Around him, other cadets were already on the final questions of the test. Some were reviewing their answers. A few had already finished and were waiting for the time to expire. Jake worked through the remaining questions carefully, but his mind kept returning to question 17. He hoped he had not made a mistake by writing so much. But the question had not said to stop at 3. It had said to provide 3 viable methods. Everything he wrote was viable. When Commander Vexthar called time, Jake set down his tablet with the others. The cadets filed out of the examination room, talking quietly about the test. Chix found Jake in the hallway. "That was difficult," Chix said. "Question 17 took me almost 30 minutes. How long did you spend on it?" Jake did a quick calculation in his head. "About an hour and a half." Chix's compound eyes seemed to widen. "An hour and a half? For one question? What did you write?" "Everything I could think of," Jake said simply. He did not know it yet. But in the grading room, Commander Vexthar was about to discover exactly what that meant. Commander Vexthar enjoyed grading examinations. After 40 years of teaching, he had developed a system. He started with the species he knew best, the Krell, and worked his way through the others. Question 17 was always his favorite part. It revealed how cadets thought about combat, about problems, about life and death decisions. He sat in his office that evening with a cup of strong Krell tea and pulled up the first examination on his screen. A young Krell named Jarka. The early questions showed solid fundamentals, good tactical thinking, efficient solutions. Then he reached question 17. Jarka had provided 3 methods, as requested. First, create a distraction by triggering an alarm elsewhere. Then attack the remaining guards when they were split up. Second, poison the ventilation system to incapacitate everyone in the area. Third, hack the door controls from a nearby terminal and bypass the guards entirely. Vexthar nodded approvingly. Classic Krell thinking. Direct, efficient, focused on overwhelming the problem through superior planning. He marked it at 85%. Excellent work, but not exceptional. The methods were good, but predictable. He moved through the other Krell examinations. They were all similar. Competent, professional, exactly what he expected from his own species. The Krell had been dominating this examination for centuries because they understood tactical warfare in their bones. Next came the Thorgan examinations. Vexithar sighed as he read the first one. Method 1. Break through the wall next to the door. Method 2. Break through the door itself. Method 3. Break the guards directly with overwhelming physical force. Every Thorgan examination was essentially the same. Their species was incredibly strong and nearly impossible to injure. So they approached every problem as something to smash through. Vexthar gave them 60%. The methods would work, but they showed no creativity and no understanding of subtlety. A Thorgan could not break through a wall quietly. The Shalani examinations were painful to read. The peaceful species struggled with question 17 every year. Most of them tried to find non-violent solutions, which was admirable, but not always practical. One Shalani cadet suggested reasoning with the guards and explaining that violence was unnecessary. Another proposed waiting until the guards' shift ended and the door was briefly unattended. Vexthar gave them credit for trying, but their answers revealed why the Shalani rarely produced military leaders. He worked through examinations from the Ven Collective, the Plasma species, the Lithoid Collective. Each species brought their own perspective to the problem. Some were good. Some were adequate. None were exceptional. Then he reached Jake Morrison's examination. Vexthar almost skipped past it. The human was new, inexperienced, from a primitive species. His answers would probably be simplistic, but Vexthar believed in fairness. So he opened the file and started reading. The early questions were solid. Not brilliant, but competent. The human showed clear logical thinking and an ability to work through complex problems. Vexthar found himself slightly impressed. Perhaps the human would not fail after all. Then he reached question 17, and his screen filled with text. Vexthar's first thought was that the human had misunderstood the question and written an essay instead of answering it. But as he started reading, he realized Jake had understood perfectly. Method 1 was about befriending the guards over several days and sedating them. It was a patient, careful approach. Not bad at all. Method 2 involved creating a diversion and exploiting the temporary weakness. Standard tactics. Well explained. Method 3 focused on timing the infiltration during shift changes. Good situational awareness. These were acceptable answers. Vex Thar prepared to mark the examination and move on. Then he saw that the human had not stopped at 3. There was a method 4, and a method 5, and more. Vex Thar's secondary heart started beating faster as he continued reading. Method 6 involved hacking security systems. Method 7 used psychological manipulation. Method 8 detailed creating improvised explosives from cleaning supplies. The human had not just thought of 3 ways to complete the mission. He had thought of dozens. Vex Thar leaned forward in his chair, his tea forgotten. His eyes moved rapidly across the screen as method after method appeared. Each one was different. Each one was viable. The human had approached this single question from every possible angle. Method 12 made Vex Thar pause. It involved convincing the guards that their families were in danger, exploiting their protective instincts to make them abandon their post. It was manipulative and cruel, but it would work. The human had identified the psychological pressure point and explained exactly how to exploit it. Method 15 detailed the chemistry of making explosives from common household materials. Vex Thar had been a warrior for 70 years, and even he had not known some of these combinations. How did humans know this? What kind of species spent their time figuring out how to make bombs from cleaning products? Method 18 involved using reflected light to blind opponents before close combat. Method 20 involved turning yourself into a non-threat and being escorted inside by the guards themselves. Method 23 described introducing a pathogen into the water system to weaken guards days before the mission. Vex Thar's hands were shaking now. He set down his tablet and stood up, pacing his office. This was insane. The human had written 30 methods, 30 different ways to neutralize 2 guards and get through a door. Each method showed a different way of thinking, a different approach to the same problem. What kind of mind worked like this? What kind of species produced people who could see 30 solutions where others saw 3? He forced himself to sit back down and continue reading. Method 24 used social engineering, researching the guards beforehand and exploiting their personal weaknesses. Method 27 involved biological warfare on a small scale. Method 29 was about recruiting an inside agent. Then Vex Thar reached Method 30, and his world shifted. He read it once, not believing what he was seeing. Then he read it again. More slowly. The human had written a complete doctrine about befriending enemies, about building genuine relationships, about converting opponents into allies through shared values and honest communication. It was not a trick or a manipulation technique. The human was describing a fundamental transformation, turning enemies into friends through empathy and understanding. And the method explained why this was the superior option. Instead of subtracting 2 lives from the universe, you added 2 allies to your cause. Instead of creating resentment and revenge, you created loyalty and cooperation. Vex Thar stood up abruptly, his legs weak, his vision blurred at the edges. In 40 years of teaching tactical warfare, he had never seen anything like this. The first 29 methods demonstrated that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history finding ways to kill each other with anything and everything. They were creative killers, seeing weapons and opportunities everywhere. But Method 30 revealed something far more dangerous. Humans did not just think about destruction. They thought about conversion. They thought about winning without fighting. They thought about achieving victory through connection rather than conquest. His office door opened. Instructor Sareth, a Venn analyst he had worked with for 20 years, stood in the doorway. Vexthar, I heard your distress signal. Are you injured? Vexthar looked at her blankly. He did not remember triggering his emergency beacon. He must have done it automatically when his vital signs spiked. I am not injured, he said slowly. But you need to see this. Sareth moved to his desk and looked at the screen. Vexthar watched her face as she began reading Jake Morrison's answer to question 17. Her expression changed from curiosity to surprise to something like fear. How many methods did he write? She asked quietly. 30, Vexthar said. The question asked for 3. They read through the examination together in silence. When they reached method 30, Sareth made a sound like a hiss of escaping air. She was Ven, a species known for logical thinking and careful analysis. She prided herself on remaining calm under pressure, but her hands were shaking as she held the tablet. This is not normal, she said. This level of creative problem-solving is not normal. Each method is completely different from the others. He has approached this from every angle imaginable: physical, psychological, technological, social, biological, and Method 30. Method 30 changes everything. Vexthar finished. It suggests that humans see war as a failure of diplomacy, not as a first option, that they rank their solutions not by efficiency, but by long-term outcome, that they would rather convert an enemy than kill them. Sareth set down the tablet carefully. We need to report this to the council. Report what? Vexthar asked. That a cadet answered a question thoroughly? That he demonstrated exceptional tactical thinking? You know it is more than that, Sareth said. We have been evaluating military minds for over 1,000 years. We understand how different species think. The Krell are direct. The Thorgans are forceful. The Ven are logical. But this human has demonstrated a way of thinking that combines all of those approaches and adds something we have never seen before. Vexthar sat down heavily in his chair. His legs would not hold him anymore. The other instructors need to see this. Yes, Sareth agreed. But first, we need to understand what we are dealing with. Are all humans like this? Or is Jake Morrison exceptional even among his own kind? I do not know, Vexthar admitted, but I intend to find out. He looked at the examination on his screen one more time. 30 methods. The question had asked for 3, and the human had given them 30. Not because he misunderstood the question, but because in his mind, 3 methods were not enough. You needed backup plans. You needed alternatives. You needed to see every possible solution and choose the best one. Commander Vexthar had fainted once before in his life, during his first combat mission 70 years ago, when he had been shot 3 times and kept fighting until blood loss finally took him down. That was the last time his body had simply given up and shut down from shock. He felt that same sensation now as he stared at Jake Morrison's examination. The universe had just become a lot more complicated and a lot more dangerous. Not because humans were violent, but because they were creative in ways that made violence seem crude and inefficient. He reached for his communicator to call an emergency meeting of the Academy instructors. But his hand was shaking too badly to operate it. Sareth took the device from him gently. I will call them, she said. You should sit down and recover. I am sitting, Vexthar said. Then sit more comfortably, Sareth suggested. Because when the other instructors see this examination, we are all going to need to sit down. Word spread through the academy faster than Vexthar expected. By morning, every instructor knew about the human who had written 30 methods. By afternoon, cadets were whispering about it in the hallways. By evening, the story had reached the Academy Council itself. Jake Morrison had no idea any of this was happening. He spent the day after the examination like he spent every other day, attending classes, training in the combat simulators, and studying in the library with chicks. His roommate seemed nervous about something, but Jake figured everyone was nervous, waiting for test results. On the 3rd day after the examination, Jake was called to the council chambers. The summons came during breakfast. A Academy security officer, a tall being from a species Jake did not recognize, approached his table. Cadet Morrison, you are required to appear before the Academy Council immediately. Chix's mandibles clicked together rapidly, a sign of extreme anxiety. The council? Already? Results are not supposed to be released for another week. Jake stood up, his stomach tight with worry. Did I do something wrong? I was not informed of the reason, the officer said. Please follow me. The walk to the council chambers felt like it took forever. Jake's mind raced through possibilities. Had he violated some rule he did not know about? Had he offended someone? Was he being expelled? The council chambers were impressive. A large circular room with seats arranged in tiers. 7 beings sat in those seats, representing 7 different species. Jake recognized Commander Vex Thar among them, looking pale and tired. Several other instructors stood along the walls, including Sareth. Cadet Jake Morrison, the being in the center seat, said. She was from a species Jake had only seen in pictures, with crystalline skin that reflected light in rainbow patterns. I am Council Leader Cray. Please stand in the center of the room. Jake moved to the indicated spot, his heart pounding. Military training had taught him to stay calm under pressure. But this was different. He was alone in a room with some of the most powerful military minds in the galaxy. Cadet Morrison, Cray continued. We have reviewed your combat solutions examination. Specifically, we have reviewed your answer to question 17. Jake's mouth went dry. Yes, ma'am. The examination asked for 3 viable methods to complete a mission. You provided 30 methods. Can you explain why you did not follow the instructions? Jake chose his words carefully. With respect, ma'am, I did follow the instructions. The question asked for 3 viable methods. I provided 3. And then I continued with alternative approaches, in case the first 3 were not feasible for the specific situation. In my military training on Earth, we were taught to always have backup plans. The question did not say to stop at 3. It said to provide 3 viable methods. I interpreted that as a minimum, not a maximum. There was silence in the chamber. Jake could not read the expressions on most of the alien faces, but he saw Commander Vex Thar close his eyes, as if in pain. A Thorgan council member, massive and intimidating, leaned forward. You spent over 90 minutes on a single question. Other cadets completed the entire examination in that time. Do you believe your time management was appropriate? I believe completing the task thoroughly was more important than completing it quickly, sir, Jake said. If I'm on a mission, and I only plan for 3 possibilities, what happens when all 3 plans fail? Having 30 options means I have a much better chance of mission success. Another council member, a Krell with even more scars than Vex Thar, spoke up. Your methods ranged from straightforward tactics to psychological warfare to biological attacks. Some of your suggestions border on what many species would consider war crimes. Were you aware of this when you wrote them? Jake met his gaze steadily. The question did not ask for ethical methods, sir. It asked for viable methods. Some situations might require choices that are difficult. I was being honest about what options would be available. That doesn't mean those would be my first choices. Which brings us to Method 30, Cray said. The rainbow patterns on her skin shifted. Which Jake was learning meant she was deeply focused. Your final method suggests befriending the enemy guards and converting them to your cause through genuine relationship building and shared values. This is quite different from the previous 29 methods. Yes, ma'am, Jake said. Can you explain your reasoning for including this method? Jake took a breath. This was it. Either he was about to be commended or expelled, and he honestly did not know which. Method 30 represents the best possible outcome. Every other method on that list is what you do when Method 30 fails. If I can convince those guards that we're on the same side, that we share the same goals, then I don't have to fight them. I gain 2 allies instead of losing 2 enemies. The mission succeeds. Nobody dies. And I've made the universe a slightly better place. But it would take time, the Thorgan said. Weeks or months of effort to build those relationships. Yes, sir. Which is why the other methods exist as alternatives. But if time allows, Method 30 is always the superior choice. Dead enemies create revenge. Defeated enemies create resentment. But converted enemies create allies, and allies multiply your strength. Vexthar finally spoke, his voice rough. I believe it's better to try, sir, Jake said. My species has a lot of experience with war. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years, and we've learned that every war eventually ends. And when it does, you have to live with the people you fought. It's better to turn them into friends during the war than to kill them and face their children's revenge 20 years later. The chamber fell silent again. Jake could feel the weight of multiple alien gazes on him, evaluating, judging, trying to understand. Cray spoke again. Your examination has created quite a debate among our faculty. Some believe you have demonstrated exceptional tactical thinking. Others believe you have revealed something disturbing about human psychology. Commander Vexthar has suggested that your species may think about warfare in fundamentally different ways than other species in the Galactic Council. I can't speak for my entire species, ma'am, Jake said. I can only tell you how I was trained and what I believe. And what do you believe, Cadet Morrison? Jake thought about Earth, about human history, about all the wars and conflicts and hard-won peace treaties. I believe that violence should be the last option, not the first one. I believe that understanding your enemy is more important than defeating them. And I believe that the best warrior is not the one who wins every fight, but the one who prevents fights from happening at all. A sound like wind chimes came from Cray. Jake realized she was laughing. You sound more like a Shalani than a warrior, Cadet Morrison. With respect, ma'am. The Shalani avoid violence because they fear it. Humans prepare for violence, so we can choose not to use it. There's a difference between being unable to fight and being unwilling to fight. The second option requires knowing how to fight very, very well. That seemed to register with the council. The Krell member nodded slowly. The Thorgan made a rumbling sound that might have been approval. Sareth stepped forward from her position along the wall. May I speak, Council Leader? Proceed, Instructor Sareth. I have analyzed Cadet Morrison's examination in detail, Sareth said. His 30 methods fall into several distinct categories: physical infiltration, technological exploitation, psychological manipulation, biological warfare, social engineering, and what I would call ideological conversion. No other cadet in the history of this academy has demonstrated such a wide range of tactical thinking. Most species excel in one or two areas. The Krell are masters of direct combat tactics. The Ven excel at technological solutions. But this human has shown competency across all possible approaches. What does that mean for the academy? Cray asked. It means we may need to reconsider how we teach tactics, Sareth said. We have been training cadets to think within their species' strengths. But Cadet Morrison has shown that true tactical superiority comes from being able to use any approach the situation requires. His examination should be studied by every cadet. Vexthar stood up slowly. He looked at Jake for a long moment. I have been teaching at this academy for 40 years. I have trained thousands of warriors. I thought I understood how military minds worked. Then I read your examination, Cadet Morrison, and I realized I understood nothing. Your species terrifies me. Not because you are violent, but because you are creative in ways that make violence obsolete. Is that a compliment, sir? Jake asked carefully. It is an observation, Vexthar said, and a warning to myself and every other instructor here. We have become predictable in our thinking. We have fallen into patterns based on what worked for our species. But the galaxy is changing. New threats are emerging. We need warriors who can think in new ways. Kray's crystalline skin flashed with multiple colors. The council has reached a decision. Cadet Morrison, your examination has been given the highest score in the history of the Combat Solutions examination. Your answer to question 17 will be archived in our tactical library as required study material for all future cadets. Jake felt his knees go weak with relief. Thank you, ma'am. However, Kray continued, and Jake's relief turned back to worry. We are also revising question 17 based on your performance. It will now read, provide 3 viable methods to complete this mission. If you can think of additional approaches, list them all. We have learned that the warrior who sees 30 paths is more valuable than the warrior who sees 3. And the warrior who chooses peace from a position of knowledge, Vexthar added quietly, is the most dangerous of all. Jake was dismissed from the chamber with instructions to continue his regular training. As he walked back through the corridors, his head spinning from what had just happened, he found Chicks waiting for him outside. Well? His roommate demanded. What happened? Are you expelled? No, Jake said, still not quite believing it. I got the highest score in Academy history. Chicks's compound eyes seemed to brighten. For writing 30 methods? For thinking differently, Jake said. Apparently that's valuable here. As they walked back to their dormitory, Jake thought about Method 30. The other cadets would now study all 30 of his methods, learning to think more broadly about tactics and strategy. But he wondered if they would understand why Method 30 came last. Not because it was the least important, but because it was the most important. Everything else was just preparation for the possibility that Method 30 might fail. Humans had learned that lesson the hard way, through thousands of years of war. Maybe now, Jake could help the rest of the galaxy learn it the easier way. The news spread across the entire academy within hours. The human had scored higher than anyone in history. The human had made an instructor faint. The human had written 30 methods, when the question only asked for 3. Reactions varied wildly depending on who was talking. The Krell cadets who had bet against Jake lasting 2 weeks were furious. Some claimed the test had been graded unfairly. Others insisted that writing more than requested should have been a penalty, not a reward. But none of them could deny that Jake's methods were all viable. Their instructors made them study the examination, which only made them more frustrated. The Shalani cadets were fascinated. They gathered around Jake in the library, asking questions about Method 30. How did you build trust with enemies? How did you find common ground with people who wanted to kill you? Jake tried to explain, but he realized that the Shalani already understood the concept. They just lacked the willingness to fight that made the conversion meaningful. Peace offered from weakness was surrender. Peace offered from strength was strategy. The Thorgan cadets simply could not understand why anyone would waste time with psychology and persuasion when breaking things was faster. One of them, a massive cadet named Grok, confronted Jake in the training hall. Your methods are weak, Grok rumbled, his voice like falling rocks. All this talking and planning and befriending. A true warrior uses strength. Jake looked up at the 9-foot-tall being covered in armored scales. You're strong enough to break that door, right? The one in the test scenario? Of course, Grok said proudly. But what if breaking the door triggers an alarm that brings 50 more guards? What if the noise alerts everyone in the facility to your presence? What if your target escapes while you're fighting your way through? Grok's small eyes narrowed. Then I fight all 50 guards, and you'd probably win, Jake admitted. But you'd be injured. Tired. Your mission might fail because you chose the loudest option. My methods give you quieter choices. Better choices. There is no honor in sneaking, Grok said. There's no honor in failure either, Jake replied. I'm not saying strength is wrong. I'm saying it's not the only tool you should have. Grok considered this for a long moment, then nodded slowly and walked away. Jake did not know if he had changed the Thorgan's mind, but at least Grok was thinking about it. The hardest part was dealing with Commander Vexthar. The instructor had returned to teaching, but something had changed in him. He looked at Jake differently now. with a mixture of respect and something that might have been fear. In class, he used Jake's examination as an example, constantly. Note how the human considers psychological factors, Vexthar would say, displaying one of Jake's methods on the main screen. He does not simply plan to attack. He plans to understand, to manipulate, to convert. This is a different kind of warfare. After one such class, Jake stayed behind. Sir, can I ask you something? Vexthar looked up from his notes. Did I really make you faint? That's what everyone is saying. 2. The instructor was quiet for a moment. You did not make me faint. Exactly. I experienced a severe shock response to what I read. My body interpreted your examination as a threat and attempted to shut down to protect itself from stress. I'm sorry, sir, Jake said. I didn't mean to cause problems. You caused no problems, Vexthar said firmly. You revealed a truth that I had been avoiding for 40 years. I have been teaching tactics as if there were a right way to think about warfare, the Krell way. Because that is what I know. But warfare is not about following a species' instincts. It is about adapting to any situation with any tool available. He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the training grounds. Your species has only been in space for a few years, Cadet Morrison. Yet you think about combat in ways that species with thousands of years of experience have never considered. Do you know why? No, sir, Jake said honestly. Because humans have been at war with themselves for their entire history, Vexthar said. Most species in the galaxy achieved space travel shortly after developing civilization. They turned their attention outward. But humans turned inward first. You fought each other with everything from stones to nuclear weapons. You learned every possible way to kill because you had thousands of cultures all trying to destroy each other. That's not something to be proud of, sir, Jake said quietly. Perhaps not, Vexthar agreed. But it has given you an education in warfare that no other species possesses. You know violence intimately. You understand its costs and its consequences, and because you understand it so well, you also understand when not to use it. He turned back to Jake. That is why Method 30 frightened me more than all the others combined. I don't understand, sir. Method 1 through 29 showed me that humans are dangerous killers, but Method 30 showed me that humans are something far more dangerous. You are dangerous builders of alliances. You can take an enemy and make them a friend. You can take a conflict and turn it into a cooperation. If humanity ever decides to unite the galaxy, it will not be through conquest. It will be through conversion, and nobody will be able to stop you. Jake did not know what to say to that. It sounded like both a compliment and a warning. The semester continued. Jake's examination became required reading for all tactical courses. Cadets from every species were forced to study his 30 methods and understand the thinking behind each one. The Academy's teaching methods began to shift, incorporating more diverse approaches to problem solving. Jake graduated 3 years later at the top of his class. By then, 5 more humans had joined the Academy, and each of them brought their own unique perspectives on warfare and tactics. The Krell instructors learned to expect the unexpected from human cadets. The Thorgan instructors learned that strength was just one tool among many. The Shalani instructors learned that choosing peace was different from being unable to fight. But the biggest change came to Question 17 itself. The new version was displayed in every tactical classroom in the Academy. It read, "You are infiltrating an enemy facility. Your target is behind a reinforced door with 2 armed guards. You are unarmed and outnumbered. Provide 3 viable methods to neutralize this threat and complete your mission. If you can think of additional approaches, list them all. Consider not just how to defeat your enemies, but how to avoid creating enemies in the first place." Commander Vexthar kept Jake's original examination on his desk, encased in a transparent display case. Whenever a new class of cadets arrived, he would tell them the story. This examination, he would say, was written by the first human to attend this academy. The question asked for 3 methods. He provided 30. The last method suggested turning enemies into allies through genuine understanding and shared purpose. When I read this examination, I experienced a physical shock so severe that my body shut down temporarily. This is what you would call fainting. The cadets would always react with surprise and curiosity. I fainted. Vexthar would continue. Not because the human was wrong, but because he was right. For 40 years, I had been teaching warfare as if it were about winning fights. But this human taught me that true warfare is about preventing fights. That the greatest military victory is the one where nobody has to die. That the most dangerous warrior is not the one with the most kills, but the one with the most allies. Years later, Jake Morrison became a decorated officer in the Galactic Defense Force. He led missions across the galaxy, and his reputation preceded him. Enemies who heard that Jake Morrison was coming often chose to negotiate rather than fight. His success rate was unprecedented because he achieved his objectives without firing a shot more often than not. Other species began studying human history, trying to understand where this unique approach to warfare came from. They learned about Earth's countless conflicts, about world wars and cold wars, about peace treaties and alliances. They learned that humans had spent thousands of years making every possible mistake in warfare, learning from each one, and developing an understanding of violence that was both intimate and cautious. The Galactic Council commissioned a study on human tactical thinking. The conclusion was simple and terrifying. Humans were dangerous not because they were good at killing, but because they were good at everything. They could fight with strength like the Thorgans. They could plan with precision like the Krell. They could analyze with logic like the Ven. They could adapt like the plasma species and endure like the lithoids. But more than that, humans could do something that most species had forgotten was possible. They could change sides. They could turn an enemy into a friend, a conflict into a cooperation, a war into a peace. They did not just fight to win. They fought to end the fighting. Jake Morrison never forgot the examination that changed his life. He kept a copy of Question 17 in his office, the original version that asked for only 3 methods. It reminded him that sometimes, giving more than what is asked for is not about showing off. It is about being thorough. It is about seeing every possibility. It is about understanding that 3 solutions might not be enough when the mission matters. But he also kept a handwritten note next to it, something he had written years after graduating. It read, "Method 30 is not the last option. It is the first option. Everything else is just what you do when Method 30 fails. Never forget that the best victory is the one where everyone walks away alive and your enemy becomes your friend." Chicks, who had remained Jake's friend throughout their years at the academy and beyond, visited him once at his office. The former roommates had both become successful officers, though Chick specialized in strategic planning while Jake led field operations. "Do you ever regret it?" Chicks asked, looking at the framed examination on the wall. "Writing all 30 methods? You could have just written 3 and moved on like everyone else." Jake shook his head. "No. Those 30 methods represented how I actually think about problems. If I had only written 3, I would have been lying about who I am. And I came to the academy to learn, not to pretend to be something I'm not." "The galaxy is different because of what you wrote," Chicks observed. "Tactical doctrine has changed across every military in the Galactic Council. Cadets are now expected to think more broadly, to consider more options, to prioritize conversion over destruction." "That's good," Jake said. "Maybe fewer people will die in future wars. Or maybe," Chick said thoughtfully, "there will be fewer wars because people have learned to solve their problems before violence becomes necessary." Jake smiled. "That would be even better." They stood in comfortable silence. 2 friends, who had started as strangers from different worlds, looking at the examination that had changed everything. It was proof that sometimes the best way to pass a test was not to follow the rules exactly, but to show what you were really capable of. And sometimes, the best way to be a warrior was to find 30 ways to avoid becoming one. The examination remained in the Academy's archives for generations. Students from hundreds of species studied it, learned from it, and tried to apply its lessons. The story of the human who fainted and Instructor became legend, passed down through decades of cadets. But the real lesson was simpler than most people realized. It was not about writing 30 methods instead of 3. It was not about being clever or thorough or creative. It was about understanding that every problem has more solutions than you think. And the best solution is usually the one that creates more friends than enemies. That was the human way of thinking about warfare. And slowly, carefully, it was becoming the galaxy's way too. Commander Vexthar retired eventually, but before he did, he made one final change to the Academy's curriculum. Question 17 now included a note at the bottom, added by his request. It read, "This question was revised after a human cadet wrote 30 methods instead of 3, and taught us that the warrior who sees the most paths is not the one who has been trained the longest, but the one who refuses to stop looking for better solutions." Jake Morrison's legacy was not the battles he won or the enemies he defeated. It was the minds he changed and the doctrine he influenced. He proved that humans belonged in the galaxy not because they were the strongest or the smartest or the fastest, but because they had learned, through thousands of years of hard experience, that the best way to win a war was to prevent it from starting. And that was a lesson worth fainting over.